angels, it's Hailey Reese, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so grateful that you are here, and I hope that you are having an absolutely beautiful morning, afternoon, or night, whatever it is for you when this video finally reaches you. Today's video is one that I am super excited to dive into with you guys. Today we are diving into yet another true Home Alone experience. And this one is just absolutely what nightmares are made of. I don't know if it's to do with things that I experienced as a child or just my overall fear of who or what could be lurking and watching while you're completely alone and vulnerable. But this experience and experiences of this nature, they do a number on me. And today's experience is absolutely no exception. This is one of those reminders that our intuition is something that should never be ignored. That even if you feel like you're in the safest of places or somewhere that bad things don't happen, that doesn't mean that you should let your guard down, and you definitely should always trust your gut. This experience is one that reminds us that while there is so much light and good in the world, darkness and evil is truly among us. So with all of that being said, sit back, relax, maybe turn a light on, and if you're home alone, perhaps double check that your doors are locked and your windows are shut tight, because this experience could terrify even the strongest of people. All right, let's get into it. So this experience begins with a woman in her 30s named Madison. Now, Madison and her husband had been together since high school, and so much of their life could be described as that picture perfect high school sweethearts, white picket fence. Basically, what you could imagine the all-American marriage looking like was exactly Madison and her husband. They got together early on in life in high school. They went to prom together. They graduated. They got engaged fresh out of high school, married, and went on to build their dream home. Now, where they decided to build their dream home actually wasn't in any sort of secluded or rural area, as a lot of these stories begin with. In fact, this was just in a modern neighborhood that was perfect for them to potentially start a family in. Madison and her husband had been discussing expanding their family, and they felt like now was the right time. And so the both of them decided to have a yes year of sorts, where they would both do all the things that they've always wanted to do and say yes to every opportunity that came their way, because the next year they were going to try for a family, and they knew that things would be a little more scheduled and closer to home once they started to grow this family. And so when her husband had the opportunity to go away with the boys for a bachelor party for one of his good friends, Madison thought it'd be an awesome time for him to get that extra time away with his friends. And so Madison was set to be entirely alone in their home for 1 week. Now, for work, Madison worked as a photographer, and it was something that she was super passionate about. But because she was so passionate about this profession, she found that oftentimes she would overdo it with work, becoming tired, almost so tired that she would wind up feeling delusional, and it just seemed like the hours in the night would slip away from her. So a lot of her nights were spent locked away in her office, just working on these beautiful portraits that she had shot. But when the first Friday of her week alone rolled around and her girlfriends wanted to come over for a girls' night, before she knew it, Madison would find herself there with her girlfriends watching a terrifying, scary movie. Now, Madison just remembers at one point during the movie hearing what sounded like a loud slap against the window that the girls were sitting up against on the couch. The couch was pushed up against this front window, and they all heard it, and they all jumped, and they all looked outside. But it seemed as though there wasn't anybody there. However, Madison would quickly learn her lesson on horror films while being alone that night, because after her girlfriends left to go back to their homes and their families, Madison was left to her own vices and playing the game of what was that sound and do we have a ghost in our house? Now, for the coming days, Madison started to notice some really odd things happening in her home. She would notice the next morning that when she was brushing her hair and she'd place the brush down, Madison would turn around to go and check her phone that was plugged in the other room, and upon returning, the hairbrush was missing. Madison would misplace a couple items of clothing. While she was in the middle of making herself a morning drink, she would turn around and it appeared she had drank more of her drink than normal. And when she went to go and get her car keys to go out and shoot a couple's shoot she was scheduled for, well, she couldn't find them anywhere until they suddenly appeared right on top of a shirt that had been missing for the past day or so. Now, Madison started getting really freaked out by this, but immediately she starts to think that they have a ghost. I mean, think about it. She had just watched this scary movie, and now she's having all of these experiences in her home of things being misplaced and turning up in other areas throughout her home. So Madison's texting her husband and saying, "All is well, but I think we have a ghost." Now, obviously, her husband thinks that she's silly, but throughout the coming days, she sends him these photo updates of all these strange little things happening around the home. But a couple of nights later, things would get even more chilling. One particular night was harder on Madison than she'd realized it would be. It was a significant date between her and her sister, whom had suddenly passed away just a couple of years prior. Now, Madison didn't know if it was being alone or if it was just that the emotions had got the best of her from lack of sleep, but she found herself just completely crying and talking to her sister. She couldn't really control herself, so she decided to go to the shower, and there it is that she heard in the bathroom what sounded like somebody walking around as she's there talking out loud to her sister. Now, Madison said she had soap in her hair and soap falling down her face, so she rinsed her face, and as she opened her eyes, there on the bathroom mirror was a handprint smeared down it. Now, Madison said that she automatically had a terrible feeling. She jumped out of the shower. She called her husband. Her husband answered and she explained everything. And Madison doesn't know if it's that he was just drinking or having a good time, but they both essentially came to the conclusion that perhaps her sister spirit was with her, and that's who'd been playing all the tricks on her and doing all of these quirky things throughout the home, and that's who had done that on the mirror to let her know that she's with her. And while it made Madison feel better, she couldn't shake this feeling that that was further from the truth than either of them could begin to understand. Madison said that she went to sleep that night, but she could hear what sounded like somebody crawling around on the floor surrounding her bed. As she would get up to look, she wouldn't see anything, and so she would go back to sleep. But then once again, Madison would hear these strange little noises. And as she woke up the following morning, there on the pillow beside her was the hairbrush that had been missing. However, next to the bed, in one of the picture frames on her husband's side of the bed, the picture of her and her husband was now missing. Madison couldn't shake this terrible feeling, but she had a super big work day ahead of her, and she honestly felt like she was going crazy. She felt like she'd watched this scary movie. She was now home alone, probably in more of a mentally vulnerable space than she'd realized, and perhaps she needed a little more time to heal before she could be left alone for this long. And so Madison goes about her day and returns back home, and what would happen that night would be that out of a horror film. Madison said that she returned home and she realized that the front door was still locked, but as she went into the house, it seemed as though once again things were amiss. Shoes were in different places than they'd been prior. There were a couple of cups out that Madison knew she hadn't left out. Madison started to get this terrible feeling and was texting anybody that she could, but everybody just kept telling her that it was all in her head. They told her to go and play a happy movie and that would make her feel better. All night, Madison kept hearing what sounded like weird noises upstairs. And as she would crawl up the stairs and go to her bedroom, she once again would notice that a couple of things in the room were amiss and out of place. Madison says she walked out of the room when she thought that she felt like she saw someone move in her peripheral vision. As she slowly spun back around and looked into her bedroom, she didn't see anything, but she had a very weird feeling. She said she shut off all the lights and decided she was going to go to sleep as her husband was due back within the next day or two, and she felt like she'd really just done a mental number on herself. She climbed into bed and she started dozing off, and that was when she would have this dream, a dream in which her sister would visit her and tell her to trust her instinct, to wake up. Her sister kept repeating, "Wake up, Madison. Something isn't right." Madison says she slowly sat up in the bed and felt in her gut that this was a true warning. She got up and she went to the ensuite bathroom. And as she was using the bathroom, Madison says she looked over towards her bed in her bedroom that was dark. But despite it being nearly pitch black, under the bed, Madison thought she saw some movement. Madison didn't have a dog, didn't have a cat, and again, Madison is the only one home. Her first thought is to absolutely freak out, but that's when she hears her sister's voice again, telling her to stay calm, to tell herself out loud that she needs to go and get a drink of water, and to slowly leave the home. Madison does that. She gets up. She says out loud, "Oh gosh, I need a drink." She goes downstairs. She even pretends to get a glass of water as she grabs her phone. She runs outside and she calls 911. Now, Madison feels like she's about to be made to look crazy, that they're going to arrive and they're going to think that she's some grieving, paranoid woman who cannot be left to her own self while her husband is out of town. As the police would arrive and do a sweep of the home, they would go up to Madison's bedroom, and underneath of their bed, they would find a man in a mask waiting underneath the bed for Madison to fall asleep. The man had underneath the mattress with him a bag filled with multiple tools that were suggestive of a very, very disturbing outcome. This man had been living inside of the home for nearly the entire week that her husband had been gone. It was later discovered that he had been watching the home. He'd realized that the husband had left, and at some point or another, the night that her friends left, he had entered into the home and had not left the entirety of that time. He never fully detailed his intentions with her, but inside of that bag, it was very clear that this was a matter of life and death. He would later admit to the fact that he had been watching her in the shower, watching her sleep, and that it was his handprint smeared down the mirror, that he'd been drinking her drinks, eating her food, taking her clothes, and smelling and holding on to the hair inside of her hairbrush. The man was deemed mentally ill and was dealt with accordingly, according to this particular experience. But the craziest part of all is that the man admitted that he thought she had noticed him under the bed, but that her nonchalant behavior let him believe that she really just needed a glass of water, even admitting that that split-second decision she made very well could have saved her life. So was that her gut? Was it her guides and angels giving her that intuition to know not to go back to bed and to trust herself to stay calm until she was safe? Or did her sister warn her? Or was it just luck? Nonetheless, this experience is a reminder of why being home alone can be so terrifying. But that is it for today's experience, and I am so beyond curious to hear from you what you think of it. Well, you guys, that is it for today's video. I really do hope that you enjoyed hearing this terrifying experience. I know for me personally, experiences like this absolutely terrify me. However, I live in a condo right now, so I definitely feel a little bit better, or a whole lot better about it than I would if I was still living in a home. But definitely let me know what you thought of this experience down below. If you guys are new to my channel, or you are just not yet subscribed but you do enjoy my content, I would super appreciate it if you would go ahead and click that subscribe button, and please give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness, and until tomorrow, I love you. Bye, guys.